All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jared White. I'm the Director of Communications with the Florida Youth Soccer Association. In case you haven't seen me, I'm going to give the same spiel that we've had over the last few weeks for the webinar series. Tonight, I'm joined with current FYSA Treasurer Eric Heidel and now the Executive Director Joel Dragan. So just from note, we are going to be recording this session. It will be posted tomorrow on YouTube. So please keep that in mind. If you have any questions in regards to the actual series of events that we have listed for tonight, please ask it in the chat box feature that you see on your window, and/or feel free to raise your hand and I will unmute your mic and we'll hopefully address those questions as they come and/or towards the end of the actual presentation. So with that, Eric, please go ahead, take it away, my friend.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Jared and Joel. So this is our budget webinar for the 2020 AGM. And let's see if we can get this going. Okay, so the first topic that we're going to cover are the fees for this upcoming season. So as you know, we've advertised this on our website and all the regional AGMs. The fees went up this year. So the player registration fees will be $13 for recreational players. It's a $3 increase from last season, and $25 for competitive players, and that's a $4 increase from last season. And those are a result of the increase in insurance that we experienced last year, right about at this time, that weren't previously included. So that's where those numbers specifically come from. Our fees for background checks will remain the same. Those are $40 per individual that's 18 or older. And that includes both an FDLE and a federal or national screening, and both of those are required under Florida statute. There is an age verification for anyone that's 17 or younger. That mostly applies to referees, but also if you happen to have a coach or assistant coach that falls into that bucket. That does not apply to players, but just be aware there's no cost for that, but they do have to enter in their information just to make sure that, you know, they really are Johnny who's, 13 years old and not someone who's trying to bypass the system. So both of those are processed in Got Soccer, and that's currently how we've been doing it the last few years. So there's really no change on the user interface that you're going to see there. As far as payment, as you know, the affiliate personnel, that's coaches, managers, volunteers, board members, they're billed to the affiliate's account in Got Soccer, and then we invoice those on a monthly basis. We issue invoices at the beginning of the month, and then they're due 5 days later. We process the payment in the payment wallet. And then for referees, because they're not attached to a specific affiliate and they're independent contractors, they enter credit card or debit card information at the time of their background check, and assuming their card data is valid, then the check is completed. So we've talked a little bit about insurance, and it's been kind of a hot topic this year. So that's our next area to cover. So at the top here, you see kind of a 3-year history of our premiums. So we started at $370,000 2 seasons ago. The season that we're currently wrapping up right now, we were at just over $700,000. And for next season, and this is the first time you're probably hearing this number, we're estimating that it's going to be just about $850,000. So we have the bulk of that worked out. We didn't have the D&O coverage in there, which is why I'm rounding it to $850. It was slightly below that without the D&O, and that one we're still getting finalized. But overall, it did go up, but not nearly what we were expecting. So I'll go into that a little bit more on the next slide. But I did want to cover another topic that's on the second half here, and there's been some things floating around about insurance coverage, and I want to make sure it's very clear to everyone. So this insurance for the 2020-2021 seasonal year covers every affiliate in good standing. There are no exceptions. Every single affiliate is a part of this insurance. And also, there was no point in the 2019-2020 season that any affiliate that was in good standing and actively participating in FYSA activities did not have insurance coverage. So there's been some claims that perhaps an affiliate or two didn't have insurance and was putting other affiliates at risk if they were playing games with them. That is absolutely not true. At no time that any affiliate in good standing was participating in FYSA activities was there a lapse in insurance coverage. Everybody was covered by the limits required by US Youth Soccer, so nobody was put at an increased risk. So on the next slide, These are the things that we did. So you'll see I've kind of already mentioned that it was a relatively minimal increase. Our broker told us to expect up to a 100% premium increase, and you can see it was far below that. So that's really good news, and we're very pleased by that. So what did we do to make that happen and to help with that? Well, first of all, a big thank you to Joel and the staff. They did a really exhaustive search. I mean, we were doing international markets, the entire domestic market. We got quotes from all kinds of insurance companies, even ones that we hadn't dealt with before. And the insurance that we ended up going with is going to be a collaboration between our existing broker of several decades, M.E. Wilson, and a newer company that a lot of others are working with, and they're kind of breaking into the insurance side. They've done a lot with risk management and abuse prevention and those sorts of things, and that's Players Health. And so those two are going to be collaborating, and we ended up getting kind of the best of both worlds, some new products that Players Health had, and also still were able to maintain our relationship with M.E. Wilson, which we're very happy about, because those are the people that you deal with when you submit like a participant accident claim, right? Us and you are dealing with them, and they've been really excellent to work with. So we're happy to keep them on board. We also switched to a new background check provider, and we flipped the switch on this in January. The new provider is JDP. You don't really see anything different when you enter background check information. It's just the company that's processing it. And we were able to maintain the same cost, but get some additional services. So they're handling some of the initial denials and things like that, right? Kind of the clear-cut ones. So if you're on the sexual predator list, we don't really need a committee to tell us that you should be excluded. That's a pretty easy one, right? So they handle all of those and processing some of those more administrative paperwork things to free up some staff time for us. Again, at the same price that we were paying before. And they also offer faster screening. So you may have noticed, for those of you that have completed your background checks for this upcoming season, which by the way, those are open and you should complete it as soon as possible. Those are coming back in under a week. In fact, I think mine came back in less than 2 days. And one other change that you'll see, this is the only thing you'll see on your end, and it's only post-processing. Previously, you would see 2 background check cards come back. One was the state, one was the federal. And under this new JDP system, you'll only see 1. So you only need 1 card or 1 approval in there versus the 2 that you previously needed. And it'll come at the same time. We also have a new relationship with Presidium, and Joel has talked a lot about this on some of our town halls and other meetings. So part of that is including a tip line, and I have the phone number to that in another slide. But we now have a 24/7, 365-day-a-year tip line. If you think something has happened, you need a little bit of guidance, or you need to report something, you can call this number, and the professionals at Presidium can help you out. We've also signed a larger partnership with them, and they're going to come in and do a full audit of all of our sexual abuse policies and risk management policies, and really advise us where we need to beef things up or what we can do a little bit better to tighten things and make sure we're doing everything we can to keep the participants safe. And they're an industry leader in that, and quite frankly, the relationship with them probably helped us to get cheaper insurance and really to make sure that we could get insurance coverage at all. Also, if you listen to our board meeting from May 30th, the board considered an enhanced sexual abuse and molestation policy. That's also the acronym SAM is what that's what it stands for. And so Joel spent a lot of time putting that together. It's about 14 pages, if I remember correctly, and it covers a multitude of things. It's based on the Safe Sport Code, their model code that they have, as well as a number of other resources. And it really sets forth a lot of very stringent requirements that we think will help keep everyone safe and out of trouble. So those are sort of the things that FYSA has done over this past year to make sure that we could get our insurance, number 1, renewed, and number 2, at as reasonable a price as possible, as well as hoping to not experience significant increases moving forward. So the next topic that I want to cover really is, what do we need all of you to do, right? So FYSA can sit here and we can, create policies and things like that, but we cannot be on all of your fields, right? There's over 200 affiliates, and there's 19 board members, 11 staff members, and 8 appointed board members. Even if all of us went out to a site every weekend, we could not even be at half of them. So we really need all of your help. You're the eyes and the ears. So first thing you need to do, if there's any suspected abuse, notice it's suspected. So that means you have a good faith belief that there's been abuse. It doesn't mean that you have to do some extensive investigation on your own and prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not your responsibility. If you have reason to believe there's abuse, you need to report it. So how do you do that? First of all, you need to call law enforcement. That could be dialing 911. It could be calling a non-emergency number, depending on the situation, right? If it's past abuse that you're learning of, maybe you don't need to call 911, but if you, interrupt some sort of activity. So you'll notice in that policy that we created, it talks about making sure that activities with youth participants are interruptible and observable. And what does that mean? That means not closing the door, making it observable, or if the door is closed, it's not locked, meaning someone can come in and interrupt whatever activity is going on. And so anyway, you would need to report it to law enforcement immediately. That doesn't mean when practice finishes. That means whatever you're doing at the time that you learn of it, you stop immediately and you immediately call law enforcement. That is the best way that you can keep yourself from getting in trouble, because there are stringent requirements that you have to meet under state and federal law. So whatever you're doing when you learn about it, you need to stop and immediately report it. After you talk to law enforcement and wrap that up, the next thing you need to do is report it to Safe Sports. So you can do that at their phone number here. It's 720-531-0340, or you can go to their website if you Google Safe Sport, and there is a way that you can report it, through their website using text. After that, we ask that you report it to FYSA and Presidium. You can use that tip line that we created. That number is 866-607-7233. And if you also get in touch with Joel at the office, whether it's the office number or his email, he'll get back to you as quickly as possible, and also he can take information that way. But we'd prefer that you use all of these lines that we have here. That's the best way to make sure all the right people are notified and that you're meeting your obligations, right? Because as we know from doing our Safe Sport training, we're all mandatory reporters. That means there are penalties for us individually if you know of abuse and you fail to report it. And that's under both state and federal law. The next bullet, so don't touch anyone for any reason at any time. I literally mean that, right? If we keep our hands to ourselves and don't touch anyone, we won't have an issue, right? And so you may say, well, what do you mean at any time? What if someone's having a medical emergency? Well, what I'd recommend you do is, instead of touching the person, I would touch your cell phone and I'd dial 911 so that we get trained medical professionals en route. And then I would have their parents, who should be there, come over and assist them. And in absence of that, then I would make sure whatever you're doing is observable and interruptible. Next bullet, don't remove any clothing from anyone at any time for any reason, right? So sexual assault or crimes like that, they don't just involve touching people, right? If you expose yourself, that could be a sexual crime. So if everyone keeps all of their clothes on, that includes shirts, changing, the whole 9 yards, we will have no problems with that. And lastly, no adult is alone with any youth participant at any time for any reason, unless you're the parent or guardian, right? So if you're the coach and your daughter's on the team, obviously you're going to be alone with your daughter at some point, right? That makes sense. But anyone else, you should not be. That includes driving them to activities. So picking them up and driving with them alone, that is not permitted under our policies. Waiting for parent pickup. So you should have an assistant coach with you, or worst case, at least a bunch of other players. You should not be alone with them in absolutely any situation. And this also applies in the digital world as well, right? So yeah, physically in places, but our policy covers that as well. And that means you're not Facebook friends with kids that are on your teams. You're not text messaging them. It doesn't matter that it's at 8 a.m. in the morning versus 1 in the morning. You should not be text messaging youth participants at any time. Our policy specifically says if you're going to do something like that, you need to include the parent or another adult on it. And we really recommend that you use apps that are out there that kind of record these things and also send it to everybody at once. So there's no question that you're, texting an individual, you're texting the group. The other thing is to make sure that every adult participant is completing their background check every single year. It's required on an annual basis by Florida law. And this includes your recreational coaches, managers, team managers, assistant coaches, and that includes in-house programs too. Anyone who's interacting with youth for more than 10 hours per year is required to complete a background check. And this actually includes referees as well. and your assigners are responsible for making sure that they've done that. And lastly, we need everyone to complete their safe sport training annually. So the first one you did was about 90 minutes. Your refresher is somewhere between 20 minutes and a half hour or so. So it's really not that big of a burden. And everybody has to do that every single year. So between the things that FYSA is doing, enhancing policies, creating new partnerships so that we can learn more, and these things that you can help us with, we're really putting ourselves in a good situation, not only to have a better insurance rate, but more importantly, to protect all of the kids that are playing soccer in the state of Florida. So the other thing that FYSA is doing to try to tighten down costs and tighten our belt up, we've issued revised financial policies. So the latest financial policies have been in effect for about 2 years. And earlier in May, we revised them. I'm going to walk you through some of the revisions that we made. So the first is transportation costs. So dealing with vehicles. So we've decided that all the volunteers, so that includes all of the board members. By the way, none of the FYSA board members are paid. They are all volunteers. The only thing they receive are reimbursements and an FYSA polo. They're going to be reimbursed for now on at the IRS mileage rate, the charitable mileage rate, and that's currently 14 cents a mile. And that's compared to the business rate, which is this year 57.5 cents per mile. That's in the second bullet. So for people that do receive compensation, that would mean the FYSA staff in the office or independent contractors that we pay mileage to, they're going to receive either the business rate, which is 57.5, or the cost of renting a car, and they're going to receive the lower of that. So they're going to do a quick analysis of, hey, the mileage would cost $200, but renting a car costs $100, and they will get the lower, which in this case is $100. Now, for whatever reason, they don't want to rent a car, they really want to take their car, that's fine, but they're still going to get the $100 that's the cheaper rental car rate. And then FYSA employees now will not receive mileage that's if the amount that they go is equal to or less than their normal travel distance from home to the office. So if they're going 20 miles, from home to the office, and they travel west, and now they're going to go somewhere that's 20 miles to the east, if it's that same distance, they're not receiving absolutely any mileage. And if they do go somewhere that's farther than that, their mileage will be reduced by their normal mileage driving from home to the office. And the reason for this is we don't ask them to go anywhere for free. They are getting paid while they travel and while they're present somewhere representing FYSA. And so they shouldn't be benefiting more than they would if they were at their normal work location, because they are being paid. And then any expense in excess of that, right, if they're traveling from Auburndale to Tampa or something like that that they wouldn't normally do, they should be compensated for that. But nobody should be compensated for what they would do anyway. And then as far as air travel, which really is fairly limited, it's mostly for when there's travel to out-of-state events like US Youth Soccer workshops or things like that. You have to have prior written approval from the president, the treasurer, or the executive director if you're going to have airfare in excess of $500, or if you're booking airfare less than 14 days ahead of whatever you're going to. So the latter point is really, we all know that, in the last 14 days, things get really expensive as far as flights, and there's really nowhere that we're going that we don't know ahead of time the dates for it and that it's, coming up. So there's no reason that we should be waiting. And I don't mean to imply that this has been a problem or has been happening, but we're just documenting that if you're gonna wait until the last minute, you need approval. And hey, there could be an emergency trip, and we would approve that, and that would be fine. Some other costs we address, lodging costs. So similar to what you just saw on the transportation, that anything in excess of $250 a night would need approval from the president, treasurer, or executive director, and then that same 2-week thing applies as well. And $250, you may think, like, where are these people staying? But to be honest with you, in the springtime, when we're running some of our competitions like President's Cup, State Cup, and some of the locations that we're going to in South Florida, even here in Brevard where I live, it's spring break time at certain points. And so some of those hotels along the coast, and I don't mean they're staying in oceanfront hotels, just anywhere along the coast, even 20 miles in, are very expensive. They're in excess of $200 a night for a Hampton Inn, right? Which I don't think anyone is staying at, Ritz-Carlton or anything like that.
Hey, Eric, you've got a
Yes.
question here in the chat box that I think is kind of germane to this portion of it, if I can interrupt just for a second.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just asking, were travel expenses excessive in the last few years from Paul?
No, they really haven't been excessive. So we, about 2 or 3 years ago, enacted a financial policy that was pretty comprehensive, and nobody was really abusing those in any way. We just, with insurance rates going up and needing to therefore increase player registration fees, we wanted to show that we're doing our best to tighten the belt and make sure we have very refined policies in place. So no, I don't really think anyone was abusing it. I question many of the expense reports, and pretty much everything that goes out of the bank account I look at, not because I think anyone's lying, but I just verify it. In fact, to my wife's dismay, the first thing that I do every morning when I wake up is I grab my phone, I check my email, and then I log into the FYSA banking app, and I literally look at everything that came out that day prior. And if it's something I wasn't expecting or an oddball, I check into them. So I would say, based on what I know and what I've seen and sampled, no, it's not being abused, but we just want to make sure that going forward it's not, and that everybody knows very clearly what we're expecting.
Well, I think this was also in an effort for the board to just kind of and staff to buckle down a little bit, right, in order to pass as small or as little of the fee increase due to the insurance along to the membership. These were some of the steps that were taken.
Right, exactly. And one thing that I don't have in my slides, but related to transportation costs, is the board has also decided that it's only going to meet in person twice per year. And one of those is going to coincide with the AGM, as it always has. And so, right, those expenses go to the AGM. They weren't board travel necessarily anyway, because it was kind of a double dip there, right? We got a 2-for-1. And so there'll only be one other meeting that we're doing in person. So that really cuts the board's travel expenses in half, right? Because we used to meet 4 times per year. So in addition to like these requirements, just doing things like that, which were really prompted by, hey, we had to go to Zoom or go to meeting because of COVID-19. And we realized, look, we don't need to be in person quite as often. And so we've decided to slim that down to 2 instead of 4 in-person events per year. So also lodging, you'll see on here the second main bullet is you only get lodging, so a hotel room basically, if your one-way travel is more than 50 miles from home. And 50 miles may not sound like a lot, but like in the Tampa area or Miami area, to travel 50 miles on, say, a Friday evening, before an event or whatever during rush hour traffic, I mean, that could easily take you 90 minutes or longer. So it seems pretty reasonable when you think about it from what is that actual commute time versus just the raw mileage. And you also have to meet one of these 2 requirements, which is you would have to leave home earlier than 6 a.m. or be required to arrive home later than 9 p.m., right? So nobody's expecting them to, drive to like 2 in the morning or anything, but we thought those were pretty reasonable. So if you have an 8 o'clock event and your drive is an hour and you'd have to leave at, say, 6:30 or 7, okay, then you're not getting a room. And that seemed pretty reasonable. Let's see, next slide. So meal costs. So we've had caps on our meals already that I didn't think were excessive either, but we've lowered those even a little bit more. So you can see the breakdown. Breakfast is limited to $15, lunch to $20, and dinner to $35. So that's about $70 a day. And if you compare that to the federal government has an organization called the GSA, and they set travel rates for hotels and per diem. So the hotel ones we really can't use because what they don't tell you and what a lot of people don't know is you have to use a government rate or have a negotiated rate like that if you're a federal contractor. And FYSA is not eligible to have that. And most hotels don't offer that GSA lodging rate unless you have that. So we kind of ignored that for that reason. But if you look on average, the per diem rate that the GSA has, there are some places in the country, of course, that are a little bit lower, because cost of living and expenses are lower. And then there's also some places that are a little bit higher, right, if you're going to New York City. But on average, right, 70 is about where it's at, somewhere between 65 and 70. So it's sort of loosely based on that. So it is in line with the federal government rates from the GSA. And, a lot of people would actually argue that the GSA rates are low, or at least a lot of people that travel think that. So, by no means do I think they're excessive. I think we're, really trying to do our best here. We've also made clear that alcohol is not a permitted or reimbursable expense. If you want to have dinner and you want to have a beer or something, that's totally fine, but it'll be at, your expense versus FYSA's expense. And we've also eliminated +1s at FYSA's expense. So we would previously allow a spouse to certain events, right, like a gala dinner or something like that. And we're no longer going to do that. They're welcome to come, but they'll have to pay their fair share if there is a cost to it. So I have a couple things to cover on COVID-19 to kind of give you an update there. So the first one is refunds, and I walked through these very briefly on the regional AGMs, but there's a little bit more detail here. So in the competition department, we have roughly $450,000 overall. 250,000 of that were refunds and another 200 credits. So if you recall, you could take a credit for next year's event that was worth 100% of next year's fee. And, so a little bit less than half took that and a little bit more than half took refunds. So the breakdown for those, futures had, just over 10,000, same with Commissioner's Cup. President's Cup, we refunded $85,000 and State Cup, $143,000. And those were sent out in early June. So I think most of the checks were dated June 8th, 9th, or 10th. And they were sent to the affiliates, not to the individual teams. And we did confirm all of those mailing addresses in writing prior to sending them. So if you have not gotten your check, we did send it where you requested, and you need to get in touch with us, please, because there's either a problem with the mail or something went wrong. So we'd like to find out what's going on if you don't think you've received your check, and we'll make sure it hasn't been cashed and then, address it as we need to, whether it's canceling that check and sending a new one or finding out that it was cashed and then, figure out what we need to do. But everyone should have received those. I've seen tons and tons of them going out of the bank account. I have been seeing a few come in after the regional AGM, so hopefully, some people that I guess hadn't checked the mail in a while or something, because it was a PO box that they don't regularly go to. It seems like they've, gone and started cashing those, but they are coming up on a 60-day mark, so, just make sure that you get them. They're not invalid after 60 days, but we'd prefer that our fiscal year ends at the end of August. So if you can cash them, that would be very preferable rather than us trying to hold those over. And then in the coaching department, we had a roughly $50,000 impact, and those were some refunds due to ODP camps that couldn't happen. So normally we have a kind of a sleepaway dorm style ODP camp at 2 universities. Those universities closed down because of COVID and wouldn't let us have those events. So we did do some modified ODP camps, one in Auburndale and one down in South Florida. And some people went to that and we credited them there and then refunded the difference because it was a little cheaper since it didn't have lodging. And then there were also some coaching courses that couldn't happen. US Soccer had them suspended, and so we issued refunds for those as well. And we did try to be cognizant. It may have been annoying to some that we refunded the competition things via check, but as you know, every time we process credit cards, we pay a percentage. And so we were already refunding such a huge amount and taking a hit that we didn't want to further exacerbate that. And the other problem really is if I refund it to the team manager's credit card, because that was the one that was used, and I now give her $800, well, if she's going to give that out to the team and spread it out, that means she's got to have $800 in cash to give out, right? Because yeah, that credit's sitting on her credit card, but the credit card company is not going to mail her that money, right? So you would have to have that money available, or like buy your groceries over the course of weeks or a month until it kind of offset it, and then use that money that you would have used anyway. It could have been a big mess, and we felt it was just better to go with checks, and it was a little more financially responsible on our end. So the other thing that we did as a result of COVID-19 is we did apply for a Paycheck Protection Program loan. They are technically loans, but I'll explain a little bit more about what we're expecting there. So we actually applied, thanks in part to Joel. He's the one that woke up and did this. We applied by 8:15 the day that they opened. So the application's opened at 8 a.m. on a Monday. By 8:15, our application was submitted. We unfortunately were not approved in the first round. We applied through a national bank and decided, hey, for the second round, once Congress added funds to it, we would apply through a local bank. So we went through Citizens Bank and Trust, which has a branch in Auburndale near our office, and is an entirely Florida-based bank, and in fact, mostly based in Polk County or in the greater Tampa, Lakeland sort of area. So use a local business for that. We were approved in the second round and we received about $177,000. And that allowed us to avoid consideration of any staffing reduction. So we still have all of our full-time staff members on staff with full pay without a reduction. And that's really important to me because, all of those people are depending upon their paychecks to feed their families and pay their mortgage and things like that. And so I'm, really happy that we were able to do that and not impact any of them, given the unknown with COVID-19. So I mentioned that it is technically a loan, but the federal government is forgiving those if you meet certain criteria. So if you use a certain percentage of it to have payroll and don't reduce any of your full-time heads, you can get full forgiveness. It also allows you to pay things like utilities and rent and leases, things like that. So based on the criteria that were originally set, Congress then made them a little bit easier. Instead of having to meet it within 8 weeks, you could meet it in some extended period, several months. We would have met the requirement in the first 8 weeks, so I have really no doubt that we'll be fully forgiven. So with that, we expect really no cost to FYSA or its affiliates because we won't be paying even the very minimal interest that these loans have due to the full forgiveness. So if you've seen our website and our social media, we did launch a new logo this year. A picture of it is up. And so I figured, okay, some people may ask, well, we gave out all these refunds and, times are tough with COVID-19, right? GDP in the country's down 32% or so, and, people are losing jobs. So, okay, FYSA went out and spent money on a logo. We actually did not. So we have used no FYSA funds to date to pay for this new logo. So US Youth Soccer, a little more than a year ago, did a rebranding themselves and came out with a new logo and all of that. And as a part of that, they negotiated some hours of free design work for all of the state associations. So we took advantage of that and we didn't pay for any of this design work. We used what we were given by US Youth Soccer. And then in this current season, we've spent no money to implement it. We've only done it digitally. So you've seen it on our website, you've seen it on some of our presentations, but we didn't change anything else. And in this upcoming seasonal year, we are not expecting to spend any money for that. No money is budgeted. We will be spending a little less than $10,000 with Expand a Brand. So US Youth Soccer is a part of that where they got us the design work. They also got us a credit with Expand a Brand that expired this summer that we had to use. So we went ahead and used the free design work and are getting some items that include the new logo, but those are really at no cost to us. There's no FYSA funds being used. There's no intention, as an example, if you've seen our building, we have our logo on it. There's no intention to rush and change that. It'll be a really gradual transition. But the bottom line is we use no FYSA money to do any of this. It was all free to us thanks to US Youth Soccer and the things that they did. So, hopefully that makes people feel a little bit better that we weren't launching a new logo while other people are suffering or anything like that. So going into the proposed budget for this upcoming season, I thought about going through the budget first and then thought, well, people are going to have a bunch of questions on items. So let me cover, sort of the big items that I thought might come up and then show you what's in the budget. So there is a link at the bottom that you can see, and the budget has been posted on our website since early June. The board approved it on its May 30th meeting, and it'll need to be ratified this Sunday during the AGM general session. So if you want to take a look at the actual document aside from what I have in here, it can be downloaded there if you go to the AGM section, and there's a drop down for the budget right where you would find like the rule changes and things like that. So okay, a few budget assumptions. So what did we do to come up with this budget? So we assume that in 2020, 2021, this upcoming seasonal year, that we will have about 85,000 players register. So where did we end up this year? We're at just under 97,000 players that registered for this current season. So we tend to be somewhere hovering right around 100,000. So considering that much of the spring season didn't occur, our numbers were actually pretty decent, not as bad as we were expecting. And so we think there will be a roughly $10,000 player drop as a result of COVID-19. So you'll see my next bullet says plan reduction due to COVID-19. So we think there's two factors there. One is health and safety, right? So there may be some families that are just not comfortable with their kid playing. And that may be dependent on, where in the state they live and what's going on in that area, right? South Florida seems to have been hit particularly hard, but the Panhandle, for example, right, with less population density, maybe not as tough. So there will certainly be people that are not comfortable playing, and there's no judgment there, right? I don't say it to judge anyone, just a fact. There will be some people that are comfortable and some people that aren't. And so we're expecting some reduction there. And, it could be greater than that depending on what's going on, right? If this thing gets under control, hey, more people may feel comfortable. If we continue on a bad trajectory, it could be a lot worse. And then there's financial constraints, right? So even if I feel comfortable with my kid going out there, I may not have $1,000 to register them to play competitive soccer. I may have lost my job or be worried that I will lose my job, and so I'm not going to spend that kind of money. So those two factors we think are going to weigh heavily, and we will definitely lose some players next year just due to a combination or one or two of those. The budget also presumes that we will resume operations, and so yes, it does think we'll have slightly less players, but we think it's based on all of the spring events happening. So yes, soccer does happen in the fall, but a lot of the FYSA events don't happen, right? Some very limited portion of State Cup, but there's no Commissioner's Cup, President's Cup. A lot of the ODP camps happen in the late spring and into the summer, things like that. So this is assuming by then we'll be able to hold all of those events. So yes, if we don't have those, this budget will look a little different. And yes, the revenue would be down, but a lot of the expenses associated with them would also be down, right? We won't be paying trainers to be at State Cup sites. We won't be paying lodging and airfare for ODP camps, regional ODP camps, things like that. So a lot of things would offset each other and go hand in hand. Another assumption here is that none of the bylaw or rule changes pass. So one that comes to mind particularly that has some financial impact are the tournament fees. So there's nothing built in here to assume that that passes and that we have additional revenue coming from that. So, we're really not hurt if that doesn't happen from that perspective. And currently those tournament fees are somewhere around $5,000, $10,000 at the very most of our revenue. So out of a $4 million overall budget, approximately, it's not really a driver for us. And then also it assumes all of the things that I've already walked through, right? Like the increased player registration fee, the insurance, although a quick note when we get to this next slide, the insurance is budgeted in here. It was a bogey of 1.1 million, and we're about $250,000 less than that. The reason that hasn't been updated is because the board had to approve this at its May 30th meeting, and so we'll have a little bit of upside there. But we plugged in that number, and thankfully we came in a little bit lower than that. It also assumes the background check fees, as well as the things that I talked about with the financial policy, and also the things like the board only meeting twice rather than 4 times per year in person. So here's the proposed budget. This is available on our website as a PDF. So you'll see here, the 1.1 insurance bogey is in here, right here, I'm pointing to it. It's the insurance-players. And so that'll, help us out a little bit. So this deficit here will be closer to, 1.1-ish million or so, which will put us closer to under 500, probably even close to $400,000 here as a net loss, which we were expecting because we didn't pass on any of the insurance increase this year. Like I said, so I'm going to walk through. So you see it has like tournament, admin, and coaching. That's how our budget's broken down. So tournament is really the competition department. That's all of the State Cup and all those competitions. The admin is sort of like things in the office, the board, staff, those sorts of things. And then coaching is really ODP and coaching courses are the big drivers there. So I have breakdowns here for each of those. So this first one is for the competition department. The State Cup and President's Cup entry fees, as well as FSPL, went up slightly. The State Cup and President's Cup went up because U.S. Youth Soccer raised what it's costing us to enter a team into that competition. So that was passed on. And those are posted on our website as well, what those fees are. I believe they went up by $50 each, approximately. So here's the breakdowns that you can see here. If anyone has any questions, I'm kind of monitoring that on the side, and Jared, I think you are as well. I haven't seen any. Have you seen any, Jared?
We got a question from Paul here. He wants to know what the assumed breakdown between select at $25 and recreation at $10 was. Paul, maybe you can expand upon that a little bit. We definitely want to help you answer that question. Or if you'd like, I can unmute you so you can ask Eric here directly.
Okay.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, the 85,000, Eric, of the 85,000, what was the assumed breakdown when you to get that revenue figure? What was the assumed breakdown percentage-wise between recreation and select? 40,000 to 50,000? 40,000 select, 50,000 rec?
So when you're saying 85, what are you referencing?
You said you believe that there would be 85,000 kids signed up.
Oh,
Number.
yes, Sorry. Yep. Yeah. So that's
There's an obvious
roughly right now we're about a 60-40-ish split, with 60% being recreational players and about 40 being
used to get this, a 60-40 split.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it is possible, like I mentioned, maybe if the economy's bad but people are comfortable playing soccer, they may say, hey, I can play competitive, but I can play recreational soccer because it's a little cheaper. Or maybe people are more comfortable playing recreational soccer because your games tend to be in town versus traveling all over the state.
I get it. I don't think there's any way to look into the future and really say that's a good assumption.
Why are you doing that?
So yeah, here's the tournament breakdown. I've had that up for a bit. If anyone has any specific questions here, I'm gonna slide over to the, if I can make it slide, to the admin budget. So you'll see one thing to note here right under this general column is all of the staff salaries are listed here. So you can see there, and that's 11 people, by the way. So on average, nobody's making out.
No, that's not.
And then I have gotten a question in past years about this credit card and bank fees, 55,000. So that's mostly the credit card processing fees. So like if a club pays their registration fees via credit card, what we hit, or when people register for State Cup, things like that, we're really not charged very much from our actual bank for having our accounts. So that's mostly credit card processing.
Hey, Eric, I haven't. Sorry, not to interrupt you. Paul has another question here. He's asking to explain the other fees. Paul, I'm going to unmute you so you can kind of expand upon that for us.
Yeah, Eric, there's 600,000 there, a significant amount of money. What makes up other fees? Is that that doesn't include any of the ODP? It includes none of the President's Cup, State Cup, Commissioner's Cup. None of the revenue from that is in that 600. What is in the 600?
So that is largely the background check fees that we charge. So we don't count those as membership income. We kind of account for them separately. And then there is, down below, kind of where my mouse is right now, the outgoing 600. So that's really
that's not the net on it. That's a gross figure.
Yeah. Yep. That's just showing you what we bring in, and then pretty much most of it goes right back out.
Good.
Yep. And that is one of our largest expenses, right? So our insurance, our staff, and background checks are really the biggest expenses that we have out of really anything. And then, this one over here down on the lower left, the FYSA sponsored program. So that's the FYSA Bucks program. And that's, the Bucks store that people get to go to based on their recreational player counts. So just, it looks kind of weird, FYSA sponsored. It's just the Bucks program of what we spend. And then the shipping for that, because we don't charge anybody to ship the items to them. We cover that as well. All right, so I'm gonna slide over, and here's the coaching budget. So one question that I've gotten in the past, and it's a kind of a big number, right? What is this $200,000 of travel for ODP? So when we've sent people to, first of all, the ODP teams normally go out and play in California or another place to play against other, higher quality, more competitive ODP teams. So that's partially included, but what that is really covering is we pay for all of the flights when they go to these regional camps and things like that over the summer that are usually held in like Alabama sort of area at universities. We pay for all of their flights. Now we don't pay for it, you know, out of the goodness of our heart kind of thing. It's built into the revenue that's coming in, but we cover all those flights. We book them all on one single flight. And so that, you know, comes right back out, but it looks like a really large expense.
Eric actually got a good comment for you. Paul says that our finances are in great shape and are really transparent. Kudos. So some good work for you there, bud.
Wait till you see the last slide, and then you might really think that. So okay, going to the next topic is FYSA's reserves. So we do have an official investment policy, and we revisit it annually. It's actually written in there that it has to be relooked at every single year at the board meeting that coincides with the AGM. So this year it's the Saturday prior, so the board will be looking at that. And basically what this does is tells our advisor, you know, what are we generally expecting you to do? And you know, just to give you a brief summary of that, the answer is, number one, we expect you to be in relatively conservative things, right? We're not here to try to make a 50% return. I don't know that that's even possible, right? But we're not here to push the envelope, right? We're here to be responsible with the funds. We want to grow them, you know, in a reasonable way so that we keep up with inflation. But we're not looking to be daredevils. We're not looking to, you know, be in some emerging real estate market or anything like that, right? We want trusted companies. They've been around for a while. They, you know, do very well. And so it tells them what sorts of things we want them to invest in. You know, he has ranges on how much cash to have, how much to have in fixed income, how much to have in equities, things like that. Really, the idea here is so that we don't lose everything if the market goes down. And a point to that is, so there's balances here. These are as of the end of June, so really as the end of last quarter. And our professionally managed portfolio, and it's managed by an advisor that we've been with for probably 20 years about or more. So way before me, way before, you know, several presidents even. We have about $3.5 million in that portfolio, and it's only down 0.25% year to date as of June 30th. And I actually believe that it's up somewhere around 1% right now. So, you know, given the downturn, I realize the market's been very volatile. It has been, you know, on kind of an upward trend lately, which is, you know, somewhat surprising. But really, we haven't lost a ton of money and are actually right now up. So overall, he's doing a really good job with that, and we're really happy to have him and happy to stick by him. And then we also have a fixed income portfolio. It's with the same brokerage firm, but it's not professionally managed. It's really in CDs, certificates of deposit, that have alternating maturity dates. So, you know, if one comes due now, you know, another one comes due a year from now, or, you know, whatever. We're not in all these 5-year sort of things that all start at once and have no access to any of the money. And we've actually given direction, just so everyone's aware, that since I think March, that any of them that mature are to be left in cash, just because we didn't really know whether we'd get the Paycheck Protection Program loan or what was really to come with all of this COVID-19 stuff. So we wanted to have some additional liquidity, and we have not changed that guidance so far, right? It's just still too early to know. So I guess the important thing here, right, is we've weathered COVID-19 so far with the help of the Paycheck Protection Program, and also just, you know, doing the things that we needed to do. And certainly the virtual AGM made things a lot cheaper for us. That was not the reason for doing it, right? COVID-19 and bringing people from all over the state together just didn't seem wise, you know, because recently there's been a lot of publicity around rising cases. So we didn't want to put anyone at risk, and safety was really the reason. But it will end up saving us some money, which I guess is a good thing considering all the refunds that, you know, the outpouring of cash that we had for those refunds. But, you know, should things look really bad, you know, I mentioned, hey, we're planning for roughly 10,000 less players this coming seasonal year. But should things look significantly worse, right, assuming that we do no staffing reductions or anything like that, we have, you know, some money to help us weather that storm that we can pretty easily access. So, you know, overall, we're in good shape to make it through COVID-19 until we have a vaccine and some longer term solution. So those are really all the slides that I had prepared today. I'm happy to take questions about, the budget, anything I presented, anything to do with financial things, really any questions you might have, feel free. We can either type them, we can unmute you, whatever you'd prefer. Do we have anything rolling in, Jared?
I'm not seeing anything at this time. So, I'll probably give it another 30 seconds if you guys want to submit something. If not, then Eric, if you've got nothing else, great job. And just so everyone's aware, we will post this first thing tomorrow morning on YouTube, so you can watch it for the next year. And if you have any questions, obviously reach out to the FYSA staff or Eric here as well. And thank you for joining us tonight. Eric, you want to add anything else, my friend?
Yeah, so if you happen to have questions between now and the AGM, feel free to email me. My email is treasurer@fysa.com. And secondly, and more importantly, I want to just say thank you to Jared. So Jared has been every single night attending for the last 3 weeks all of these webinars and making sure that they go well, and introducing everyone, kind of being the behind the scenes tech. And that's tough for anybody to, after hours, be doing this. So a very big thank you to Jared. And on top of that, he has, a relatively newborn baby at home. So I'm sure, his family would really love next week when he's back to them, full time. So thank you very much, Jared.
I appreciate that, Eric. Yeah, it's been a honor helping you guys out with this. And if you guys need to get in touch with me too, anything on the state level for communications wise, my email is real simple. It's communications@fysa.com. I'm happy to help out our membership the best way that we can. So, all right, thank you for joining us tonight, guys. We'll get this posted tomorrow, and we've got one last session tomorrow, which is going to be that candidate forum that starts at 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. So look for that link via our website, and or not, we'll post it on social too. So we're going to have everyone that's running tomorrow speaking. So we'll hopefully see you guys there. All right, guys. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.